Welcome to Meet the Expert. I'm Barry Schmel with the Google Cloud Learning Services team, and I'll be your host for the special webinar series designed to help you make the most of Google Meet to work remotely with your teams and your customers. This fourth webinar session is for everyone who wants to learn how to organize your meetings using Google Meet. Our customers have been asking us frequently, is it possible to join a meeting without a Google or Gmail account? Can people not invited to the meeting join via the link? And what's the best way to organize our meetings? So today's agenda is just going to be a little different. We're going to walk through some common scenarios of working with from what we've heard from our customers. The first scenario is where all the participants in your meeting are from your company. And then we'll talk about what happens when you invite external guests. And we're going to differentiate whether they're authenticated by Google, which means they have a Google managed account like Gmail, or they're another G Suite customer, or whether your invited guests are external and they are not authenticated by Google. And what we mean by that is they do not have a Google managed account. Maybe they're using Yahoo or Mac or some other mail service besides G Suite. And what happens when you share the Google Meet link with other people? And then finally, what's the experience when people join by phone? So let's get started with our first scenario. Probably the most common is where all the participants are in your company. So you're inviting other people in your organization. And let's look at our calendar so that we'll see what we mean by inviting other people in your company. So here I have a calendar event, and let's say I'm going to add Rita, and she works with me in my company. Notice that me here, B. Schmel, I am the organizer. So anyone else that I invite right now that's in my company, in my domain that we see here, that is our first scenario. So the experience is, as you would expect, everyone will be automatically admitted because they're in my company. Everyone can mute and unmute each other, and everyone can stop and start the recording. Remember, the recording, though, will be owned by the organizer, and it will be in their recording folder. So basically, when you're adding participants that are in your company, it's very easy to manage. They're automatically admitted. Now, the second scenario is where we're inviting external guests that are authenticated by Google. And what we mean by that, they're not in your company, but they are using a Google managed account, such as gmail.com, or maybe they work for another company that's domain is managed by Google through G Suite. So it's another G Suite customer. So once again, in that scenario, I'm in my calendar. And let's say right now, I'm also inviting myself at my Gmail account. Or maybe I'm inviting myself here at my Google account. So those are all Google managed accounts, but they are considered external guests because they're not part of my company. The experience there is, since Google can authenticate them, they're automatically admitted, so there is no knocking here. They will be able to mute others, but the participants will be notified, but they cannot unmute others in the call, and they're not able to stop or start recording. Actually, the recording option will be blurred for them, so they won't be able to click on that. So basically, this type of meeting is easy to manage as well because everyone will be admitted automatically. Once again, they were invited and they have a Google managed account. So that's very important. And what will be that experience for your external guests? So when they click on the link for the meeting event, they will see who is already in the call, and they'll be able to click Join Now. And the other participants, what they'll see is this notification, this little pop-up indicating that this individual has joined and they're outside of their company. So they will be aware that other people are joining the meeting. Let's look at the third scenario, and this is where your guests are not authenticated by Google. They do not have Google managed accounts. Maybe, of course, you might be doing business with other companies in this situation. So for example, maybe they're at Yahoo, they're at mac.me or incognito, basically any domain that is not managed through G Suite. So once again, if I go into my calendar, and let's say I'm going to invite T. Jones that has a Yahoo account. Maybe this is one of my contractors. that we're inviting here. So they're external and the account is not managed by Google. So what is that experience going to be? So first they have to ask to join and they will have to be admitted. So we see this knocking experience as it's called. Once they're admitted, they can mute others and participants will be notified. They cannot unmute others and nor can they stop or start the recording. So I'd have to say this is less manageable, but of course it's manageable if it's at a reasonable number of individuals because of the knocking that's going on here. So what is this experience like? So when this external guest goes to the meeting link, they'll be presented with this screen. They need to enter their name, which we cannot verify, but they can ask to join. And what happens on the other side, everyone in the company will see that someone is attempting to join the meeting. Very important, notice it says that they're unverified because Google cannot authenticate this. And then someone will have to deny entry or admit them to the call. If they're denied entry, they'll see this pop up that you can't join this call, that you've been rejected by a participant. And then scenario number 4 is where you're sharing the meeting link. So for example, you're copying this link. I could go into this meeting event. Maybe someone says, hey, I want to participate. I didn't get the link. And what happens here is, for example, that you copy this. You copy and paste the link. And you maybe share it through a chat window, maybe through email. We're talking about they weren't originally invited, but you're going to send them the link. So the answer is the experience depends on who is the individual. We already know that if they're a person that's in the company of the organizer, so another one of my team members, they'll automatically be admitted. And then they have those controlling capabilities of muting, unmuting, stopping, and starting the recording. Anyone else, because they're not invited, will have to ask to join. They'll have to be admitted, so we'll see that knocking experience. And as we saw before, once they are admitted into the call, they can mute others, they can't unmute others, and they cannot start or stop the recording. So this is a little less manageable because of the possibility of the knocking, depending on who you're inviting. And just a quick review of what that experience is. So once again, if they're in the company that you're sending the link to, they'll see who's in the call currently, and then they can join. They're admitted. There's no knocking because they're in the company. All others are going to have to ask to join, and they'll have to wait to be admitted. And then the last scenario is, well, we have a lot of meetings where people just want to join via the phone. So you provide them the phone number and the PIN, and in which case, once they authenticate using the PIN, then they're able to automatically be admitted to the call because the PIN, think of it as the password. Once they're in there, remember they're entering via the phone, so it wouldn't make sense that they're able to mute or unmute others or to do anything with the recording. They can just participate via the phone. And once again, if we look at my calendar event here, you'll notice there is the phone number that's provided that's local to my time zone or my region. And we also have international numbers that you can provide to those individuals as well. So if you had someone participating from Austria, you can send them this number, but notice the PIN for my call is the same. I also want to point out that, for example, once I am actually in the meeting itself, I'm just going to go ahead and I have to allow this. Remember, you have to allow it the first time. And let's assume that I am joining this. I don't want to get any back noise there. I want to remind us that we're also able, through the meeting itself, to add other participants. So if I'm adding people during the event, they're considered invited. So for example, if I invited Bishmel at my Gmail account, that person is authenticated through Google. But let's say I invite Bishmel at his Yahoo account, that person is invited, but they're considered unauthenticated by Google. So they will be knocking before they can admit. be admitted to the call. Okay. So those are the 5 scenarios we wanted to walk through. So once again, if they're going to connect via the phone, it's easy to manage, but the thing is it's not quite as engaging. But if you're just transferring information, or for some reason they just can't participate through their call, through their phone or through video, they may want to just participate by dialing in. So there are 3 key takeaways that I want us to have. So remember, we walked through the various scenarios, but why don't we ask the question, what is the easiest type of meeting to manage? Well, the answer is where all your guests have Google managed accounts, either because they're in your company or whether they're external, but they're using a Google managed account, such as Gmail, or they're working for another company that has G Suite. And the other important thing here is to invite those participants, either when you're scheduling it through Google Calendar, or whether you're actually in the event itself, in which case you can invite them as participants. And then the other key takeaway is there are situations where there's always going to be knocking. So think about that as well. So the time that everyone has to be approved is the outside guests that are not authenticated by Google. So they must be approved one by one. So even though I'm inviting them here, this person from at yahoo.com here, or through my calendar invite, they still will be knocking, and they have to be admitted by someone in the meeting. Okay. And one last thing to consider is if you have many external guests and they're all going to be requiring approval, they'll be going through the knocking experience, the best practice is to have someone from your team assigned to approve and admit external guests. So you as the presenter, you can focus on your presentation, and you can have another individual in your company that's participating, and they will take on that task to admit everybody. And also consider if it's a very large group, maybe the live meeting is not the best format using Google Meet. Maybe you can consider like what we're doing here. We're doing a YouTube live streaming event where all you're doing with that many people is really a transfer of information. So do you really need that interaction with all the individuals? So think about those key takeaways when you're organizing your meetings, or also look at the scenarios that we described as well. And as you know, we have some great documentation at Google. My favorite is this one here, which is the Learning Center. And this is the page that gives you all the resources for your users so they can be trained properly on Google Meet. But I also like that there's additional resources here for all of our G Suite products. So if you need additional information, for example, on Calendar, it's very accessible as well. All these links are actually provided on the event page that is linked in the YouTube live streaming event itself. Okay. So just to end, I want to thank everyone for watching today's webinar. But before we go, this time we're going to be asking everybody to submit a survey. We'd love to get your feedback, see what you like, also find out if you have any suggestions for future webinars. And we've also added the link on the YouTube in the video description below the title of the stream. And also remember to join the Meet the Expert website to get the full schedule and be informed of any upcoming webinars. From the event page, you're also able to look at any of the past recordings or webinars that we did. You're able to watch those as well. So once again, thank you very much. Stay healthy and stay safe.